Hello and welcome to another episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Joy Ravella, and nothing makes me happier than seeing an email from one of the podcast listeners. And I want to read out an email I got about 3 weeks ago from KK. They say, "Dear Joy and team, just a quick note letting you know that we love your Everyday Joy podcast. Amazing faith, truth, and conviction of you, Joy, and your guests. Thank you for sharing your gift with us and helping bringing listeners closer to Christ. And please keep up the good work. God bless." Thank you so much, KK. Thank you so much for taking the time to write that email. It really does help encourage us as a team, but it also helps me know that we are on track. Again, if you want to send through an email, let me know what you love. Let me know what ideas you have. Maybe you've got some specific questions for guests and the stories that they've shared. And KK is so right. A lot of my guests do share incredibly openly and vulnerably about their life stories. And I think that's the real strength of this podcast. Now, speaking of stories, today Ash has got a really good one. We'll get into it a little bit later. Right now, though, let's get into today's Bible verse.
Make a clean break with all cutting, backbiting, and profane talk. Be gentle with one another, sensitive. Forgive one another as quickly and thoroughly as God forgave you. That's from Ephesians 4, verse 32 in the Message version.
I've got the amazing Ash here in studio with me. Ash, so good to have you again.
So good to be here, Joy.
I really do feel like this conversation is such a great, extra for experts.
Yeah.
It leads off the back of a previous episode we did, episode 11, titled Waiting for an Apology.
Yes.
And then when we did the deep dive of the top 5 a couple weeks ago, again, we sort of unpacked it a few layers more with MJ. So do make sure you listen to those 2 episodes. Today's verse focuses not just on the power of forgiveness, but it talks about the timing.
Yeah.
And how speed is an important factor. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But Ash, what are your first impressions of this verse?
For me, the main thing that stands out to me is that second part, and it's the forgive one another as quickly and thoroughly as God forgave you. And I know when I reflect on my relationship with God, I am in awe of his level of forgiveness. I am in awe of, sometimes it's hard for us to understand his ability to forgive and forget, basically. And I think that if God has made us in his image and God wants us to reflect him, like this verse says, it just shows us that in our relationships with everyone, God wants us to be quick forgivers, and he wants us to be people who are kind and compassionate and almost at the ready to forgive. Yeah. If that makes sense. And by at the ready, I mean we have an expectation that in every circumstance we will forgive them.
Easy to say, tough to do.
Yes, tough to do.
Tough to do. And I think that's one of the things that jumps to mind, because this verse, it's almost against human nature. Yeah. Make a clean break with all cutting, backbiting, profane talk. Be gentle with one another. Be sensitive. Forgive one another quickly. Yeah. I mean, all of these things you kind of need to have in reserve.
Yes.
So that when the opportunity arises, you can just, get into it.
Yeah.
So, for you listening right now, although this verse sounds like a lot, it's doable and it's possible if we do it in God's strength and we work with him on it. Before we get to your story, Ash, what does this verse tell you about who God is or what matters to him?
I think that it shows us that God wants his people to be at peace with each other. I think we touched on it in that episode that we did a little while ago, but God's heart for us is that we are unified. His heart for us is that we are working together, that we are all moving as almost like a well-oiled machine for his kingdom.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if we aren't forgiving quickly, bitterness, resentment, all the things that come with not forgiving someone, that can really affect the way we work as a church group, as a friendship group, as a family, whatever it looks like in a relationship, whatever that looks like. I think God's heart for us is that we would be great at apologizing, forgiving, and moving on as well.
Yeah, and doing it quickly as well. Now, we've been talking a lot about forgiveness, but today's a focus on forgiving quickly.
Yes.
And this was something that was said to you after a church event, I believe.
Yeah. So we had a church event. We did a marriage and relationships panel. So we had some amazing people from our church come, and they just shared their wisdom and their experiences in their relationships. It was so awesome. And after the panel, I noticed the husband of one of the wives who had just been speaking, and they'd been married for over 40 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And I saw him in the corner of my eye, and I kind of waited for him. I wanted to catch him alone so he would be vulnerable and tell me how he truly felt about his relationship. And I said to him, I know that after 40 years of marriage, it wasn't always easy, but I asked, what is the one thing that you think saved your marriage? What was the one thing that helped you have a long-lasting relationship? And he turned to me. He's a bit of a joker, so he's always being a bit silly, but in this moment, he turned to me and he kind of pulled me in and he said, forgiveness. He said, I needed to be forgiven, and I had to forgive to allow our relationship to keep growing and to allow us to move on from the things and the circumstances that we went through as a couple. And I honestly think that is the best piece of relationship advice I have ever been given. Forgiving quickly.
Whenever I think of forgiving quickly, I think about the dishes. My old foe. I don't really enjoy doing the dishes. I often get back pain. So for me, it's just a chore that I don't like doing. I often feel a little bit sore afterwards. It's not my favorite thing to do. And the worst thing is that forever, probably until the day I die, I will have to do dishes. I have to deal with this thing. It doesn't go anywhere. And so I've come to realize that if I just deal with it when the pile is small, when there's a few cups and spoons in the sink, it's better to deal with it then than waiting until there's a huge pile that's so overwhelming, so consuming that it actually stops me from wanting to go into the kitchen. It stops me from wanting to fix myself something to eat because I just look at those dishes and I say to myself, you know what? I'll just ignore half the kitchen and just get something else out of the fridge. I think we all know what it's like when we ignore something and we leave it for the next day or the day after, but it doesn't actually take the problem away. It's still there. We still have to deal with it. It's almost better. It's almost more efficient. It's wiser, and it's almost the kind thing to do to ourselves to deal with things quickly before they get the best of us. And I feel like this verse is a bit like that. Sure, you can forgive that person tomorrow. Sure, you can forgive them a week from now, but you can't get back all that time you spent fretting over it. You can't get back the joy you missed out on, or the fact that you were preoccupied when your kids were telling you how their day was at school, or the fact that you were so stressed out you weren't able to do what you said that you do, or enjoy that movie, or be fully present when you hung out with your friends. I mean, there is a loss when you don't forgive quickly. Now, sometimes you have to forgive someone many times, especially if it's something that's been incredibly painful for you. Perhaps you've got to get a professional working alongside you, working through that. But again, you can be quick to deal with it instead of letting it fester. Maybe for you, it's to do with actually the time span, cutting it down, saying to yourself, right, I'm going to deal with this in my heart before I go to bed tonight. Or before this leaks into my evening time with my family, I'm going to deal with this work situation. Maybe for you, the quickness has more to do with how quickly you invite God into it. Maybe for you, you forget that God's there to help you. He's there to help you forgive. He's there to show you the path. And we've done so many episodes previously that we also mentioned in today's episode around forgiveness, around the power of forgiveness, around God forgiving us. So I'd recommend you go ahead and listen to those other episodes to get the most out of today's one. But ultimately, I want to finish up with today's application thought. which is this. How long do you leave your unforgiveness out on the kitchen bench? And could you start developing a habit where you forgive quickly? For the sake of your relationship, for the sake of your health, for the sake of your happiness and your freedom, could you say to yourself, actually, I would rather forgive quickly and live a more fuller, happy life than hold on to unforgiveness and ultimately rob myself of joy? It's a pretty powerful decision to make, but I do believe that if you take a step in that direction, God will be right there with you, helping you. And we can see that in Ephesians chapter 4:32. Make a clean break with all cutting, backbiting, profane talk. Be gentle with one another, sensitive, forgiving one another as quickly and as thoroughly as God forgave you. Well, that wraps up today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I look forward to catching up again tomorrow.